Hi, Rod Fleming in the Philippines here about a court case in the UK featuring Mr. Keira Bell. I think it's probably Ms. now. What happened was that Keira Bell attended a gender identity clinic, GIDS, in England through the Tavistock Institute, then the Portman and Tavistock, I believe, and was prescribed puberty blockers at age 16, went through a range of other hormonal and surgical therapies, eventually decided that she wasn't actually gender dysphoric at all, and then decided to take people to court, basically for allowing her what she demanded. And her case was basically that the authorities should have challenged her more. In fact, these are her exact words. Now, in the High Court, this was upheld. I don't think there's any chance that this will not go further. I think it's absolutely guaranteed to go to appeal, and I think that that appeal will end up in the highest court in the UK, which is Supreme Court. So we don't want to talk too much about the specific details. Just because there is a thing called sub judice, and I know this isn't technically sub judice, but it's an ongoing case, and it's not wise to start with that nonsense. Anyway, we can look at some of the background, and I think we should. First thing to note, and the first thing to state, is my own position. I will restate it. And I have been saying this since 2017. And that is, young women appearing, or young females if you prefer, appearing in adolescence with a form of so-called gender dysphoria that comes on suddenly should not get any hormonal treatment, nor should they get any surgeries. The only thing that they should be provided with is therapeutic mental health support, and yes, by all means, go ahead and socially transition. They should not be getting hormones or puberty blockers. Absolutely should not be getting them. And I've been saying that since 2017. In 2017 I said, this is all going to end up in a disaster, because even by then the figures were absolutely shocking, with the number of young females coming forward being referred for gender therapy completely at odds with anything that we had seen beforehand. Totally at odds. I mean, we were talking about a 4,000% increase in referrals, mainly amongst young females, back in 2017, and it's worse now. And so let me be quite clear. I am totally against any form of non-reversible intervention for these people. Absolutely zero. Let's go on to the second point. In 2018, my opinions were backed up. I mean, I wrote many articles about this and did videos and all the rest of it. In 2018, this was supported by a paper by Littman et alia, which categorized this condition of, so-called gender dysphoria that would come on in a matter of weeks or months, sometimes even less, as what they called rapid onset gender dysphoria. And I said at the time, and I'll say again, I think this was a terrible idea. It's not gender dysphoria. It is in fact a social contagion. And Littman, in the Littman paper, it does say this is what it looks like. It's a social contagion. It's far more like anorexia, bulimia, self-harm, and many other issues that young women in this age range, young females, are prone to. And it should not be dealt with by giving them irreversible therapies. It just shouldn't happen. It shouldn't have been happening 3 years ago, and it shouldn't be happening now. So there you are. That's what I think. That's what I've always thought, and I will stick by it. I'm completely against it. How did we get in this position? The reason we're in this position is because of an idea called false equivalency. The idea that males and females are the same and must always be treated as the same. Therefore, if it's appropriate to treat a young person with early onset or childhood onset gender dysphoria in a certain way, then it obviously must be appropriate to treat a young woman in the same way, because after all, you can't have any difference between men and women. This is utterly ridiculous. It is a function of the most noxious, pernicious corruption of modern society, which is feminism. This whole thing has been caused by feminism. What has happened is that young girls have been told that, and this goes right through education, trust me, go and have a look, that first of all, that they shouldn't be mothers. Young females are told, don't be a mother. They're being told that they're systematically oppressed because they're female, right? They're oppressed because they're female. And then they are told that their gender is not fixed, that gender is just socialized. They can be any damn gender they want. So what they're doing is they're saying, look, I don't want to be, I've been told I shouldn't be a mother, so I'm not going to be a mother, but I'm still going to be oppressed for being female, so I'll turn myself into a man. I'll become a man. Then they trundle off to the damn gender clinic, and 5 years later they're in court. Now remember, this person, Keira Bell, around whom this is all centred, begged for the treatment. She told every, I won't say the word fib, but she made every persuasive argument she possibly could to get the therapy she wanted. And now she regrets it and everybody else has to suffer. This is, again, this is an attitude that is absolutely redolent of feminism. They just don't want to accept responsibility for their own actions. Well, I'll tell you something, actions have consequences. And if you go to a doctor and say, oh my God, I've got this, I've got that, I've got the other, and that doctor takes action to give you what you want, how has he done anything wrong? So leaving that aside for a moment, the Keira Bell case brings up a few other things. The first one is, and one of the reasons why it will actually go to the Supreme Court, there's no question about it, is that it sets up a conflict, a jurisdictional conflict between the judgment last week and the pre-existing judgment, which has been not only adopted into British law, it has been adopted all over the planet, and that is something we already did a piece on, which is called the Gillick Competency and Fraser Guidelines. And I don't want to go into it too much, but essentially this determined in the mid-1980s that a young girl seeking contraception who was under 16, remember that in the UK the legal age for having sex is 16, she could go to her doctor and ask for contraceptives, and the doctor could not tell her mother, right, that she had sufficient autonomy to do this. This is a girl who was under 16. So the law had to look at this, and it came up with a reasonable compromise, which basically said that young people have a scale of competency that begins in childhood. Childhood is normally, and we always take it to mean prior to puberty, by the way. So we're talking about really 10, 11 at the tops. It starts about then, and it gets increasingly more important as time goes by until they reach adulthood. It's not a case of at age of 18 suddenly they become adults. It's a developmental process, and anybody who has studied any form of education will tell you it's developmental. It takes years, and it's not the same for everybody. People proceed at different paces. And in general, actually, young females in their adolescence tend to proceed a little bit quicker than young males. And that's probably not relevant here, but it is what has been established by many, many studies. So what we're talking about is somebody who was 16, right? At 16, you know, that is already the point at which a competency is essentially assured, right? At 16, she got these. It wasn't prior to 16. This wasn't a child getting treatment. This was an adolescent of an age of competency getting treatment. So this one, you know, watch this space, because it ain't stopped here. It has not stopped here. Having said that, my own view, and I'll repeat it, is that all of these treatments for young females should not go ahead. It shouldn't happen. Unless you can show a clear diagnosis of HSTS, homosexual transsexualism, or sexual inversion, which is what causes HSTS, then they should not be getting these treatments. And in any case, you can take a fully adult, mature woman and give her testosterone, and 6 months later she'll look like a man. It's that simple. And that woman could be 28, 29, 30, 40, even older, and she will turn into a man because testosterone is so strong. It doesn't cause females any harm to wait. I mean, how often do we have to tell you this? It doesn't do them any harm. They can wait They can socially transition, and when, you know, they're old enough, yes, they can, you know, if you're 18, you can buy whatever you want. The point is that doesn't apply to young males. Young males are constantly fighting testosterone. If you're an HSTS boy, that is, a boy who has shown early or childhood onset gender dysphoria, they've been sex non-conforming since they're 2, 3, 4 years old. It's consistent, it's insistent, it's persistent, it's all the things we've already discussed. That boy gets to be 11 or 12, that guy needs to do something about it, because they do not, it is inappropriate for them to go through male puberties. What will happen is, if they go through a male puberty, is that they're likely to become too tall. They're going to have surgeries to correct their excess height. They're going to put on bone masses where they shouldn't have them. They're going to have surgeries to do that. It's a disaster. All of which could be prevented simply by putting them on blockers. And blockers, by the way, these blockers, the effects of which are fully reversible, right? Giving a woman HRT in form of testosterone will permanently change her body. Doing that to a male will not. It just won't. As soon as you stop with the blockers, they'll masculinize. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. And you know, yeah, I know there have been a couple of outlying studies saying, oh, they're outliers. The absolute bulk of evidence we have is that giving puberty blockers and estrogen to adolescent males is harmless. That anything that's done can be undone later. And the reason people are trying to block it happening is because they don't want people to transition. That's really the point here. They want to put an end to transition. And so they're trying to make it as hard as they possibly can, because they've read the same papers I have, you know. And they've looked at it and said, oh gosh, look at that, you know. HSTS don't usually transition after 23. So if we can stop them transitioning till they're 23, then they won't do it at all. And we've won. We've got rid of trans people. That's what this is actually all about. This is about legitimized transphobia on an absolutely phenomenal scale. And it has to stop. Now, I'll be quite honest with you. I don't have a terrible great amount of sympathy for certain classes of autogynephiles. I mean, yeah, there are autogynephiles who are perfectly nice, decent people. And I would never want to see them victimized in any way whatsoever. But the fact is that most TRAs, that is those who are pushing for more and more transition of young people, especially young girls, most of them are a particular form of autogynephile, which I call the mother hen autogynephile. They're narcissists, they're control freaks, they're obsessed with interfering in other people's lives. And they are not nice people. And they should not be doing what they're doing. They need to be removed from the milieu. They need to be taken out because they've done tremendous harm already. And they will continue to do harm. The problem that we see at the moment is that we're basically looking at a backlash. The consequence of this ruling, if it goes to the appeal court and to the Supreme Court and it's upheld, is almost certainly going to be that it will become more difficult for the people who actually need HRT, that is, young males, right, under the age of 16, to stop, there's a mosquito in here, sorry, to stop them going through an unnecessary male puberty. Those are the ones who are going to suffer because they're easy targets. They're so easy. They're obvious. They're just such an easy target for these nasty people, you know, because they're young, they're impressionable, they're incredibly agreeable. They'll say anything. If, you know, some big psychiatrist professor type with a beard comes along and says, oh no, you know, you should just agree with me, you know, do what I tell you, it'll be all right. They're likely to agree. Even if 10 years later they're going, that bastard completely spoiled my life. And that is what happens. When you consider what happened in certain clinics in Canada, which were later closed, thankfully, that's what's happened. That was what happened. Boys were put through the mill of this, basically, conversion therapy to try to convert them from, basically, women into gay men. And years later, they're like, this is a catastrophe. My life has been spoiled because of this. Because they went along with it. It's just appalling. This is really just appalling. So, where we're left for the moment, as I say, this in the UK, this is going to go further. If the Bell judgment is upheld through the Supreme Court, then it will have ramifications outside of the UK, because in fact Gillick and Fraser have been adopted into basically the law of the entire former Commonwealth, certainly all the English-speaking parts of it, and elsewhere. And what does that mean? It means that laws all over the world are going to have to be re-examined. So this is not just a simple thing. This is a big problem. For those who find themselves the parents of young male, and I will say this, you can call me sexist if you like, I don't give a monkeys. You know, this is not something that bothers me. Males and females are not the same. And pretending that they should be treated the same, exactly the same, in all circumstances, is a bloody lie. And it has to stop. It simply has to stop. If you're the parent of a male with basically a childhood gender dysphoria, right? And you were hoping to be able to get that child on puberty blockers, you know, around about 12, 13, which is the appropriate time to start, this judgment could really, really cause problems. And in this case, you're going to have to self-med. You're going to have to source the drugs that are required to help your child abroad and import them. That's all you can do. The legal system has failed you. By not drawing a distinction between the case of young females who are badly damaged by being given, you know, transsexual HRT, and young boys who are not, by not drawing that distinction, the court has basically weighed against male homosexual transsexuals, male sexual inverts, decided to condemn them to a life of misery and gender dysphoria. And that's not acceptable. It's simply not acceptable. I know I'm a parent, I have 4 kids. If I had a child who was saying to me, they're all over this age now, so it's just not the point, but had I had a child like that, then I would have done everything I possibly could. I would definitely have sourced the appropriate preparations from abroad and imported them. I would definitely have done that, even if it meant breaking the law. You know, when you've got a situation where the law is an ass, what are you going to do? You know, you cannot allow decisions taken by people who are either not in full possession of the facts or have decided to disregard some of the facts to ruin the lives of your children. Your children come first. Absolutely, always come first. So, sorry, mosquito. So that's that. That's the Bell case. We'll try and keep a little bit up with it. I'm pretty sure it will go to appeal. I'm pretty sure it will end up in the Supreme Court. I have no idea what the final outcome will be. Obviously, somebody somewhere is going to have to weigh 2 different pieces of legislation and decide, or rather, jurisprudence. It's not actually legislation, it's jurisprudence. And decide what is the middle road, because they will have to find a middle ground. They're going to have to find a way to protect young females from the depredations of TRAs, while at the same time defending young male HSTS from the depredations of gay activists, for example, because the new gay man just wants more meat. You know? No, they want the boys. They want the boys, all right. Yeah. And do they want the boys, and how? So, you know, the law will have to find a way through that. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of wrangling. And this is all because, basically, this is all down to feminist dogma, which is ridiculous, and largely autogynephilic TRAs pushing the trans agenda. And I told you so 3 years ago. I told you this is going to end up in a disaster. There's going to be a huge backlash. Did I have a crystal ball or what? Anyway, that's that rant over. I'll see you later, folks. Have a nice day.